The letter arrived like a grenade, glossy and gold embossed, detonating my carefully rebuilt life. You are cordially invited to the wedding of Emily Harper and Lucas Bennett. It read, each word a shard embedding itself in my chest. My sister, my ex, and the audacity of their union in my hometown of New Orleans. How could they? I stood in my cramped apartment overlooking the Mississippi River, the humid air thick with betrayal. 2 years ago, Lucas had been mine, my first love at 26, the man who'd promised me forever under the neon glow of Bourbon Street. We'd met at a jazz club, his easy laugh and green eyes cutting through the haze of cigarette smoke and saxophone wails. He was 27 then, a bartender with dreams of owning his own place, and I, Ethan Harper, was a graphic designer scraping by on freelance gigs. We'd been inseparable until he left, claiming he needed space to figure himself out. 6 months later, I heard he was dating Emily, my older sister by 3 years. Now, at 28, I was staring at their wedding invitation, my hands trembling. The phone rang, shattering the silence. It was Caleb Bennett, Lucas's older brother, his voice steady, but laced with something I couldn't place. "Ethan, you got the invite, didn't you?" he asked, his deep baritone cutting through my fog. Caleb was 35, a lawyer with a reputation for being unshakably calm, the opposite of Lucas's reckless charm. We'd met a few times during my relationship with Lucas, always at family gatherings where Caleb's quiet intensity made me feel seen in ways Lucas never did. "I'm not going," I snapped, tossing the invitation onto the counter. "I'd rather set myself on fire." Caleb chuckled, a low, warm sound. "Fair. But what if you showed up with a +1 who'd make their jaws drop?" I froze. "What are you suggesting?" I asked, my voice wary. Caleb's next words were a spark to kindling. "Marry me, Ethan. Out of spite. Let's give them a show they'll never forget." The idea was absurd, reckless, and utterly intoxicating. Caleb, with his sharp jawline and salt and pepper hair, proposing to me? It was a middle finger to Lucas, to Emily, to the whole damn narrative they'd written without me. I barely knew Caleb beyond those fleeting moments at holiday dinners, yet his offer felt like a lifeline. "You're serious?" I asked, my heart racing. "Dead serious," he replied. "Say yes, and we'll steal their thunder." I laughed, a bitter, wild sound, and said, "Yes, let's do it." The next week was a whirlwind. Caleb flew into New Orleans from Chicago, where he ran his law firm. We met at a cafe in the French Quarter, the air thick with the scent of beignet and chicory coffee. He was taller than I remembered, his navy blazer hugging his broad shoulders, his gray eyes scanning me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "This isn't just about spite," he said, leaning forward, his voice low. "I've always thought you deserved better than Lucas. Let me prove it." His words hit harder than I expected, stirring something I wasn't ready to name. We planned our engagement with the precision of a military operation. We'd announce it at the engagement party Emily and Lucas were throwing at a swanky Garden District mansion. Caleb bought a ring, a simple silver band that felt heavy with promise, and we rehearsed our story. A whirlwind romance sparked after Lucas and I broke up, kept secret to avoid drama. But as we sat together, plotting over po' and hurricanes, I noticed how Caleb's hand lingered when he passed me the salt, how his laugh softened when I spoke. Was this just a game to him, or something more? The night of the party arrived, and my stomach churned as we pulled up to the mansion, its white columns draped in fairy lights. Caleb squeezed my hand, his touch steadying me. "Ready to shake things up, fiancé?" he whispered, a mischievous glint in his eye. I nodded, my pulse hammering. Inside, the room buzzed with New Orleans elite, all toasting Emily and Lucas, who stood arm in arm, radiant and oblivious. Emily, 31, her blonde hair swept into an elegant updo, looked every bit the Southern belle. Lucas, now 29, still had that boyish charm, but it felt hollow to me now. Caleb and I made our entrance, his arm around my waist, the ring glinting on my finger. The crowd parted, whispers rippling like a stone dropped in water. Emily's smile faltered, Lucas's eyes widened. Caleb raised a glass, his voice commanding the room. "To love," he said, "and to new beginnings. Ethan and I are thrilled to announce our engagement." The room erupted in gasps, and I caught Lucas's gaze, shock, jealousy, and something like regret flickering across his face. As the night wore on, Caleb played the doting fiancé flawlessly, his hand resting on my lower back, his smiles warm and convincing. But when we stepped onto the balcony for air, away from prying eyes, he turned to me, his expression serious. "Ethan, this doesn't have to be just for show," he said, his voice raw. "I've wanted this, wanted you, for longer than you know." My breath caught. Was I falling into another trap, or was this the real thing? The party blurred into chaos after that. Emily cornered me in the hallway, her eyes blazing. "You're doing this to hurt me," she hissed. "You think you can just waltz in with Caleb and ruin my day?" I wanted to scream that she'd ruin me first, but Caleb appeared, his presence a shield. "Let's go, Ethan," he said, guiding me away. As we left, I felt the weight of every stare, every whisper, but also the warmth of Caleb's hand in mine. Spite had brought us here, but something else was keeping me by his side. The weeks following the engagement party were a tightrope walk over a pit of fire. New Orleans buzzed with gossip. Ethan Harper, the jilted ex, now engaged to Caleb Bennett, the city's most eligible bachelor. I couldn't step into a cafe without heads turning, whispers trailing me like shadows. But the real storm was inside me, a mix of defiance and doubt. Caleb's confession on the balcony lingered like a melody I couldn't shake. Did I trust him, or was I just a pawn in his own game of revenge? Caleb insisted we keep up appearances, so we spent our days together, crafting a public love story. We strolled through City Park, his arm around me, laughing for the cameras of curious onlookers. At 28, I was lean and wiry, my dark hair perpetually messy, my hazel eyes betraying every emotion. Caleb, at 35, was all sharp edges and quiet strength, his tailored suits a stark contrast to my thrift store aesthetic. Yet, when he looked at me, his gray eyes softened, and I wondered if this was still about spite. One evening, we sat on a bench by Lake Pontchartrain, the water shimmering under the sunset. "Tell me something real," I said, tired of the charade. "Why me? Why now?" Caleb leaned back, his gaze distant. "When you were with Lucas, I saw how you loved him, fiercely, without holding back. It stayed with me." He paused, his voice dropping. "I've been in love with you for 2 years, Ethan. I just never had the courage to say it." His words hit like a tidal wave, washing away my defenses. I wanted to believe him, but Lucas's betrayal had left scars that hadn't healed. Our engagement demanded we plan a wedding, so we dove into the absurdity of it all. We toured venues, from historic plantations to modern lofts, laughing over champagne as we debated color schemes. But the more time we spent together, the more I noticed the small things. How Caleb remembered I hated olives, how he'd hum jazz tunes when he thought I wasn't listening. One night, at a dive bar in the Marigny, he pulled me onto the dance floor, his hands steady on my hips as we swayed to a slow trumpet melody. "This feels real," I whispered, my lips close to his ear. He smiled, his breath warm against my cheek. "It is." Meanwhile, Emily and Lucas's wedding loomed closer, a shadow over our charade. Emily called me late one night, her voice thick with tears. "You're making a mistake, Ethan," she said. "Caleb's just using you to get back at Lucas. You don't know him like I do." Her words stung, planting seeds of doubt. I remembered how she'd always been the golden child, the one who got everything, including Lucas. Was I just her brother, the afterthought, again? I confronted Caleb the next day at his temporary apartment in the warehouse district. Is this about Lucas? I demanded, my voice shaking. Are you using me to settle some score? Caleb's face hardened, but his eyes were soft. I won't lie. I hate how Lucas treated you. But this. He stepped closer, his hand brushing my cheek. This is about us. I want you, Ethan, not some vendetta. Before I could respond, he kissed me, slow and deliberate, and for a moment, the world fell away. But the past wasn't done with us. At a family dinner hosted by Lucas's parents, tensions boiled over. Lucas cornered me in the kitchen, his green eyes blazing. You think you can just replace me with my brother? He spat. You're embarrassing yourself. I laughed, bitter and sharp. You're marrying my sister, Lucas. You don't get to talk about embarrassment. Caleb appeared, his presence a quiet storm. Back off, Lucas, he said, his voice low but lethal. The room felt like it might combust. As we left, Caleb took my hand, his grip firm. We're in this together, he said, and I believed him. But Emily's warning echoed in my mind, and I wondered if love built on spite could ever be real. The wedding was a month away, and I was caught between my heart and my pride, unsure which would win. The air in New Orleans grew heavier as summer crept in, mirroring the weight in my chest. Caleb and I were now a spectacle, our engagement the talk of every brunch and bar. But beneath the public smiles and staged kisses, I was unraveling. Every touch from Caleb felt like a promise, but Emily's words, her warning about his motives, gnawed at me. Was I falling for a man who saw me as a weapon, or was this the love I'd been too broken to believe in? We threw ourselves into wedding planning, a distraction from the chaos. Caleb suggested a venue on the Mississippi River, a historic steamboat with twinkling lights and a view of the city skyline. It's perfect for us, he said, his gray eyes bright with something I wanted to trust. At 28, I was still grappling with who I was outside of Lucas's shadow. At 35, Caleb seemed to have it all figured out, his confidence a beacon I couldn't resist. We spent evenings designing invitations, our hands brushing as we pointed at fonts, laughter filling the gaps where doubt crept in. But the past kept intruding. One afternoon, I found an old photo of Lucas and me in my apartment, tucked in a book I hadn't opened since the breakup. We were 26 and 27, grinning under a Mardi Gras float, beads around our necks. The memory hit like a punch, and I wondered if I'd ever love like that again, reckless, unguarded. Caleb found me staring at it, my eyes wet. You okay? He asked, his voice gentle. I shook my head. I don't know if I can do this, Caleb. What if we're just pretending? He knelt beside me, his hand on mine. I'm not pretending, Ethan. Are you? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from Emily. Meet me at Café du Monde. We need to talk. Against my better judgment, I went. The cafe was packed, the air thick with powdered sugar and tension. Emily, 31, sat across from me, her blonde hair pulled back, her blue eyes sharp. You're making a fool of yourself, she said, her voice low. Caleb's playing you. He's always been jealous of Lucas. This engagement? It's his way of winning. I wanted to argue, but her words fed my fears. You stole Lucas, I shot back. Why can't I have this? She flinched, and for a moment, I saw her vulnerability. I didn't steal him, Ethan. He chose me. I left the cafe shaken, Emily's words looping in my mind. That night, I told Caleb everything, expecting him to brush it off. Instead, he looked hurt, his jaw tight. Do you believe her? He asked. I hesitated, and that was enough. I've laid my heart bare, Ethan, he said, his voice breaking. If you can't trust me, maybe this was a mistake. He walked out, leaving me alone with my doubts. The next day, I went to confront Lucas at his bar in the French Quarter. He was wiping down the counter, his green eyes guarded. Why did you leave me? I demanded, my voice raw. He sighed, setting down the rag. I wasn't ready for forever, Ethan. You wanted too much. His words cut, but they also freed something in me. Lucas hadn't loved me the way I'd loved him. Maybe he never could. I found Caleb at the steamboat venue, staring at the river. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice trembling. "I'm scared, but I want us, to be real." He turned, his eyes searching mine. "Then let it be real," he said, pulling me into a kiss that felt like a vow. For the first time, I believed we could be more than spite. But Emily and Lucas's wedding was a week away, and the city was closing in. I had to decide, trust Caleb and fight for us, or let the past win. The wedding day dawned bright and brutal, the New Orleans sun unrelenting. Emily and Lucas's ceremony was set at a historic church in the Garden District, its stained glass windows glowing like a taunt. I stood in my apartment, adjusting the silver ring Caleb had given me, my heart a battlefield of hope and fear. At 28, I was no longer the broken boy Lucas had left behind, but the scars of betrayal still ached. Caleb, 35, was my anchor, his quiet strength pulling me toward something new. But could we survive this day? We arrived at the church hand in hand, Caleb in a tailored gray suit, me in a navy jacket that felt like armor. The pews were packed, the air thick with jasmine and judgment. Emily, radiant in white, stood at the altar with Lucas, his smile as charming as ever. I felt every eye on us, the spiteful couple, but Caleb's grip on my hand was steady, his gray eyes promising we'd get through this. The ceremony was a blur, each vow a reminder of what I'd lost and what I'd gained. When Emily and Lucas kissed, the crowd cheered, but I felt nothing but relief. They were their own story now, not mine. Caleb leaned over, whispering, "You okay?" I nodded, squeezing his hand. Better than okay. At the reception, held in a sprawling courtyard draped in fairy lights, the real test began. Emily approached us, her smile tight. "You actually came," she said, her voice laced with surprise. "I'm happy for you." I lied, but it felt like closure. Lucas, however, was less gracious. He pulled me aside, his green eyes flashing. "You're making a mistake with Caleb," he said. "He's not who you think." I laughed, the sound sharp. "You don't get to decide that, Lucas." "Not anymore." Caleb overheard, stepping in with a calm that belied the fire in his eyes. "Let's dance," he said, pulling me onto the floor. As we swayed to a slow jazz tune, the world faded. The whispers, the stares, the past. "I love you, Ethan," he said, his voice raw. "Not for show, not for spite. Just you." My chest tightened, and I kissed him, right there in front of everyone. A declaration louder than any vow. Later, we slipped away to the courtyard's edge, the Mississippi breeze cooling our skin. I was scared, I admitted, my voice soft. Scared this was just revenge. But it's not. It's us. Caleb smiled, his hand brushing my cheek. It's always been us. The night ended with us walking through the French Quarter, the city alive with music and possibility. Emily and Lucas's wedding was their story, but ours was just beginning. We didn't need their approval, their guilt, or their spotlight. We had each other, and that was enough. Months later, we stood on our steamboat venue, exchanging real vows under a starlit sky. The ring on my finger felt lighter now, a promise not of spite, but of love. New Orleans cheered us on, its heartbeat ours, and I knew we'd rewritten the ending. Not just for them, but for us. Love, I learned, wasn't about winning. It was about choosing each other, every day, against all odds.